Thank you, everybody. So I'm Drew Atienza. I'm the director of the VYV Corporation. We are a media server company that also does 3D tracking, auto alignment for projection, a lot of interesting use cases for our clientele. And it is my real big pleasure to have these panelists here because we normally don't get to talk about anything that we do. We're under so many non-disclosure agreements. So when you hear, I'll have everybody introduce themselves, and when you hear where they've worked with us before, it will make sense. So Josh, would you mind starting off? Introduce yourself, what you do, and recent projects.
So I am Josh Santola. I am a senior video systems designer with Disney Live Entertainment. We're the theatrical design division of Walt Disney Imagineerings. So my most recent projects have been the Disney Villain show at Walt Disney World and the new Little Mermaid show at Walt Disney World. So, yeah.
Yep. Peter?
Peter Thompson. I worked with Cirque du Soleil for 10 years and with VYV on many projects there in the theater projects and resident shows division. I toured with them as well, like mopping big tops, so I worked my way up from the bottom there and the top. And currently I have my own design support firm called Box of Wishes, where we still consult for Cirque du Soleil and Moment Factory and a number of other show producers, some of which I can talk about, and in which we do a lot of design support, project planning, and basically the idea of Box is the idea of thinking outside the box. It's a 50-year-old idea, and the box was 2 dimensions. So at this point, all the things that you can fit within it are really well within the realms of ability.
If you want to try that one. Yeah.
And projects I worked with VYV on were X Land of Fantasy for the lighting and video tracking system in 3 dimensions. It was a large-scale show of about $155 million production in Hangzhou, China. And then infrastructure design for Drawn to Life and numerous support projects for MJ1.
Jean-Luc?
Yes, I'm Jean-Luc Gazon. I'm from Drop the Spoon, which is a video content company based in Belgium, but working worldwide. And we did all the Franco Dragone show. We also work in music industry. We did some gig for Bruno Mars, Britney Spears. And I'm here to be the artistic part of the panel. No pressure. So
Yeah, that's sorry, man, which one's a good one? This is a good one. Okay. There you go, take that one. So we came up with this idea of, technical design for visual magic. If you're familiar with these brands and have seen any of their shows, there is a lot of really cool tech and a lot of visual trickery and illusion that happens on this. But with this particular group, it's interesting with all the different backgrounds. You have Peter that has done, the infrastructure helping design systems for things that haven't happened yet. Jean-Luc from the creative side, of working with big designers, show directors and design. And then Josh also with the Disney side of thing, with Disney being its very own big thing as well. So we only have a limited time, so I wanted to take a poll real quick of what you guys are interested in hearing about. Is it more of put your hands up if you want to hear more about the creative process with our technology? Anybody? A little bit. What? So there's that. There's that. There is also working in theme parks or theme park work. A little bit. And then I think maybe we'll just go. We had dinner last night and we just talked we did the panel last night essentially. So what I think we can start with, Josh, how about we talk about
Yep.
a recent project that we did with you?
Yeah. So one of the things last night, last night we were kind of all sitting down and we were talking, and one of the big things that we hit on was that interoperability of creative and technology. Myself as the systems designer, the technical side of things, and the Jean-Luc's, the creatives, us being lockstep through the entire process. From the very big conception of the show all the way through the end of the show. And I think the most shining example I have of that is the most recent villain show at Hollywood Studios. From the very beginning of that show, myself and the art director for the show, we sat down together. It is an art director I have had challenges with in the past, and we were talking about how can we make this the best show it possibly can be. And we came to this realization of, oh, we just need to actually work together instead of trying to work against each other, of me trying to limit him based off of what I can execute and him trying to limit me off of what he is trying to accomplish. And working together to really build a nice, heavily detailed, concise show where the visual language of the entire show is present through the entire thing. In that show, you can kind of see, if we can mute the audio, please. Sorry. We can't. Thank you. Sorry. So you can kind of see with the show, there is 41 independent surfaces here. Various different technologies. So you have TVs, you have LED walls, mostly LED wall. But it was me and him working together through the entire thing to really make sure that, hey, my video walls are 500 by 1,000 mil. You want a lot of them, so that means we can't do anything custom. So here's your building blocks that you can build all of these mirrors off of and build into the set, and then I will come back and tell you how many panels you need and if that is within our budget to actually execute. And it was really cool because then we realized, oh, we can put LED walls there and over there and over there. There is, I believe, 3,000 square feet of LED wall in this show, roughly 55 megapixels of content through the entire thing. I was rather proud of that one. But not just that. When the content creation started, it wasn't Jean-Luc, unfortunately. I would have loved it to be Jean-Luc. Me and the content creators sitting down together and trying to figure out how to execute this. That is a lot of pixels. That is a lot of content to drive all at once. How do we make that happen? How many independent deliveries do we need to do? One of the big fights we kind of had to go back and forth with the content team on was, hey, with an uncompressed playback system, black space takes up hard drive space. We don't have enough room on the hard drives of these machines for the black space. So I need you to deliver me 41 individual files for every single scene. They weren't super happy about that, but we ended up working together and we came to a way to track the content and execute the content and QC the content together to really make it all happen. And then, fun fact too, this is actually, on a side note, this is Disney's very first SMPTE 2110 install. So this whole system is 100% driven through 2110. There's not a, at this time, there's not a single piece of baseband in the entire system. It's all native IP. Until if Brompton is in here, they give me my SQ200 processors. It'd be really nice, thank you.
Well, Josh, can I hop in here and
Yep.
talk? Well, thank you for that. Let me back up here. Well, about working with color and building shows, there's definitely a different tool sets that different designers and video or directors are looking for. And Jean-Luc, I was wondering if you could talk about what you're looking for when you are working with a high-profile show director and what you're trying to do and what tools and what it allows you to accomplish.
So we had the chance to be part, when we started working in the show industry, of a production company and not being a content company working for a production company. So we learned what theater and what working with an actual theater director is. And it's absolutely not about coming with a USB stick and putting image in a media server. Never. You have to be reactive, you have to be on set, you have to be listening to what's happening on the stage because you have to be reactive. And this is where working with highly advanced media server really served us. It's because we've developed a way to work real time and painting video on the theater and be able to react to any question or any demands the director has, which can be suddenly, oh, put me that there, put me that there, and yeah, okay. And the great thing is, for that to be possible, you need to have a technical team behind you that's able to react as fast as you try to think about those things. The biggest example, Franco had a small exercise he liked to do. He called that shaking the stage. Shaking the stage means everybody has to be focused on what's happening on the stage and propose things. But not propose one thing, propose 10, 20 things, show him, because that's how a director works. A director works in space, a director works with people on the stage, so he needs to see, to understand. Really, this is where we had a very good relationship with VYV here. That's because we developed together a way of working that allowed us to not get the director frustrated, because this is the worst thing you can have when you're doing rehearsal. It's a frustrated director yelling at you. So really being able to react, being able to also rely on the people that are working with you is the most important thing you can have. You need to work as a team. I mean, video content cannot be done by a team that's in a basement somewhere and comes with a stick. Video content, if you want it to fit what's actually happening on stage, need to be done on stage, live, and you need to be able to listen and to understand what's happening on stage. And well, that's what we try to do.
So, kind of talking about, not only with the Disney villains example, and also like why we're being used in these kind of contexts, is how do you design for a creative brief that A, hasn't been done before, or B, even the designer or the show director doesn't know what they want? And Peter, I was wondering if you could talk about, that process.
Yeah, so typically when I was working for Cirque Theater projects, or in my current practice, we'll be brought in very early in the process, sometimes at the business development phase, when a show producer is pitching to an end client and trying to get them to spend a lot of money or a medium amount of money or no money on a show. And when it's a permanent installation, potentially one with a long construction timeline, like you're building a massive water show outdoors, and you think you're going to want drones tracking lasers and video and the latest state-of-the-art development, but the construction process is going to take 3 to 5 years. You need to find a way to build into the process room for that state-of-the-art development. So we're not going to say, we want this box with these plugs at this moment. For example, with Josh talking about ST2110, like the infrastructure cost difference between being able to plug in a network cable and run miles of fiber optic cable is huge, and sometimes preventative, because somebody who's willing to be your show producer doesn't necessarily want to think about the $14 million of fiber optic cable beforehand. They just want to see the pretty pictures that your show producer is showing the person who's going to pay the money. And so that's where partnering with a company like VYV and saying, okay, where's your bleeding edge right now? Where do you think you're going? Having a real conversation about that, so that when you're at the rough order of magnitude budgeting phase, you leave, and the scheduling phase, you leave room in the budget for both the state-of-the-art development, but also time with the creative department for them to understand what you've brought for them. And this is one of the hardest things to convince people, because time is money, especially production time, and when there's 200 people waiting for things to happen. But it's really the only way where, if I've spent 3 years designing a Ferrari, it doesn't get driven like a Fiat. And that's a phrase that the money people just want the Fiat, and they want you to drive it like an F1. But like the finding those arguments, that's where my background in philosophy of art comes in handy, as far as defining what these things are, what the art is, and then also being able to communicate with the engineers so that they don't blow up the infrastructure ROM budget over something that's a lot bigger than it has to be, right? Saying, well, you know what, let's allocate that chunk of money that you think is going to be a massive core of fiber optic cable, and let's say that since we have 3 years to develop this, that what you're putting in there is about 20% contingency, without necessarily having the design time, or in some cases even a design concept. You just have some photoshopped images that the money people have seen and say, I want that.
No, cool. Thank you. You touched on something about what we do with some of our creative partners, like a Cirque and a Disney. But one of them, Josh, that we had talked to leadership at Disney about was our development path with using LiDAR.
Yes.
And it wasn't, from what I remember in meetings, it wasn't so much of like we needed LiDAR, but of what it enabled for.
I got you. So Little Mermaid. For those that don't know the history of this show, it was first installed in I believe it was 98 or 94, sometime in the 90s. It just got updated. We just updated it. Opened this year, the new version. When we took stuff out of there, I'm not joking when I say we took a film projector out of there. That show was run on a film projector. But when we were in the early development of that project, we knew we wanted to do something special. We wanted to take it to the next century, if that makes any sense. Like, we wanted to push the technology to the absolute limit. And me and Drew one day were having a conversation, and like, oh, we're thinking about adding LiDAR in. I was like, oh, are you? And that's how a lot of conversations with us go. And I took that as a concept back to my creative team and was like, hey guys, what if we did a LiDAR scan of the entire stage in real time and then did generative effects based off of that LiDAR data and put that live to the screen? Because one of my favorite things about theater is every performance is different. And one of the things that can be really hard with video is we're all, for the most part, pre-rendered. Like, every time you see a video, like, it's the same exact video. Every time you see Happily Ever After, it's the same Happily Ever After. But I wanted something that, with this being a theatrical show, really being more interactive and new every time you saw it. So I took that to my creative team, and they were like, oh, that sounds really cool, but we have no idea what you're talking about. Because these people think in thoughts and feelings. They're not technical people. They need to see things with their eyes. So one of the things we did was, like, we went, hey, VYV, we know you guys want to try this. We want to try this. You want to come down here? We'll set up some projectors and some different things and show them how this works in person. So that's what we did. I tried getting some photos approved of that actual process, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. But it's really fun seeing Emmerich and Drew up there trying to, like, with their phones and the LiDARs and the projectors and, like, testing different things. And
so I've got up the fireflies if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the scenes. The LiDAR effects are subtle. They aren't big and flashy. They're the icing on the cake. So here in this scene, all of the fireflies you see, those are being generated in real time. And you'll always notice that as they kind of get closer to Ariel and Eric, they kind of bounce off and move away from them because we never wanted them to really cross over. We wanted to basically create a halo around them to actually center them and focus them. Oh, I think I'm going to switch it. So, yeah. In addition to that, I think, did you have the other scene, the Under the Sea?
Yep.
And then one of the other scenes we had with Sebastian and Flounder, if Drew can bring it up, Under the Sea, we did the same thing, but this is actually using Copernicus. So it's VYV's tracking technology, the standard active trackers, to actually track those two performers, and then including Ariel. Oh, look, Ariel's working in this one. where you'll see those bubbles, see the bubbles coming out of Ariel's tail right over there as she moves. Those are actually being generated in real time as well, based off of her acceleration and how fast she moves. At one point, we had musical notes coming out of Sebastian's mouth every time he opened his mouth, but that became a little bit too much, so we cut back. But it kind of goes to it, like that little, as kind of Peter was talking about, that little time for R&D, for development, and showing the thoughts and feelings people, what the technology can do, really pushed us a very long way to actually coming up with something that, for this use case, it's very subtle. It's not a ton. As every first use case of any technology is, you typically try doing it a little bit more subtle. In our business currently, there's a lot of conversations about risks. We've gotten kind of risk averse very recently. And for us, that's not necessarily a good thing. We want to take nice educational risks that we know are going to have good trade-offs for us with not a ton of downside, but at the same time, we still need to be pushing things because we're Disney Live Entertainment, Walt Disney Imagineering. That's kind of our jobs, is to make magic from things with new technologies that people have never used before. So this is kind of one of them. We're like, hey, we're going to try this, see how we can apply it, and then maybe you'll probably see this pop up in another show in a few years.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things I wanted to turn it to Jean-Luc about is you touched on workshops and getting these big ideas out. Jean-Luc, I was wondering if you could talk to any of the coming in with the big idea, or say a not knowing something and how that gets communicated and how we work through that, like, you know, say La Pearl with the projection and the concept of that. Or actually, let me trade that. There we go.
Thank you. Lapel, but I think one of the best example for that also is the first time we worked together, which was House of Dancing Water in Macau. And the pitch we gave to VYV when we called them the first time was, well, we will have a theater in Macau with a big backdrop and 4 projectors. Yeah, okay. We will also have 10 projectors in the theater. Okay. Which are on yokes, so we want to be able to project either on the wall or on the floor with those projectors, but we will not know in advance where they are, so you need to be able to control the yoke and know where they are. Okay. By the way, the floor is composed of 8 elevators. Individually, each of them can move to +1 meter, but also go down to -8 meter. Motors cannot give you back information, you have to track them. And by the way, when they're going down below 0, it's going to be underwater, so all the tracking systems need to be waterproof. And they didn't hang up.
No,
they stayed on the phone.
Yeah. No, that's one of the fun things whenever I get phone calls from our clients, is that we were very smart in what direction that we developed our software. So like, for instance, of what made that not scary for us was that we do everything in 3D. We're true computer vision 3D approach, so that you're basically playing back textures onto accurate 3D models of the space, and then we, from there, had to figure out ways of doing the tracking and alignment, and it's all in one software. I mean, I think we just had to develop really the waterproof part, but like, when you start from a good core concept for a media server development, like, for instance, all those projectors that are on moving yokes, and they didn't know exactly where they wanted video. The way we did that is we installed IR beacons all throughout the space, and we had an accurate model of all of that. And then each, it was a DML 1200, I think, for those, yeah, which were awesome at the time for that.
Yeah, for the record, it was in 2009, so 16 years ago.
Yeah. So each one of them had their own camera on it, and so during the show, they would swing the yokes into position of where they wanted coverage. Then the cameras looking at the constellation that we have installed, basically our algorithms figured out where they were in relation to the surface, And when we turned everything on, it was already all edge blend and video mapped across that space. So it really was being able to have anything as a canvas as long as those yokes could hit it, but not have to worry about having pre-existing projection stacks for that one zone or a particular zone.
And the great thing is, it was really transparent for us for creating the content. At any point during rehearsal, we could say, oh, let's try this on the walls. Okay, let's try this on the floor. Okay, it was taking seconds for the media server to be able to move the projector because the media server was controlling the yoke, remap, and allow us to project on that surface. So that's what's important for us also, is when technology becomes transparent. It becomes magic up to a point, because nobody and none of the audience is able to understand how complicated and how top level is the technology behind that, because all we want to carry for the audience is emotion, and it works because we are able to rely on a system that allows you to try everything during rehearsal to get the most of any scene.
As an add-on. I'll
Trade you.
yeah, we're trading.
Oh yeah, you take that one.
I think the hardest part is when you're in production, and from like, I think everyone's probably been here at some point where you're not really able to focus on creating, and you're having to focus on troubleshooting, because the technology you used or something you're doing is just, you're trying to make it do the thing you want it to do, and it's just hard to make it happen. During both of those projects that I've mentioned, like, there were some times where I'm like, oh, I need to do this thing. Button press, button press, button press, done. Oh. There was even a point where, like, on the Mermaid show where we were like, the content we were getting delivered just was not meeting our expectations to the screen. We're like, we need to do a color pass on this. How are we going to do that? Oh, I have an effects graph. I can drop in color correction. Cool. I'm going to do real-time color correction, edge detection, and sharpening, all on a single box without having to repass it through any kind of rendering. And we made that happen. When the technology stops getting in the way and it actually becomes a tool for you to use and actually create with, it's one of the most, for lack of a better term, magical things, because you get to spend more time on those fine details, like the color, and less time on, oh, is this thing actually even outputting? So yeah.
I'm not a VYV employee, but this would be my sales pitch. I would actually say that in a lot of what Jean-Luc is talking about, the software platform that Photon is even more than a media server. It's more like a 3D ecosystem that allows you to paint pixels wherever you want to. So in particular, similar, another large-scale project in China, X-Land of Fantasy for Cirque, we only had a $7.5 million budget for projection. But the problem is we had a stage that was 100 meters wide and 2 seating wagons that rotated 358 degrees. And we had a design concept that involved wanting video content everywhere. So with that much space to fill, well, and on top of that, there's 2 depths of field on the main stage as far as the back wall moved another 10 meters back and forward. So we had 2 depths of field for projection there, and then on top of that, we had 2 side stages. So the audience, the concept of the audience was looking away from each other at the start and couldn't see each other. So the show is 20 to 30% different for either side of the audience. And then as they rotated forward, they're massed in scrims. And so as they rotated toward the main stage, they're still masked out by video content the whole way, and then finally they would face each other, and there'd be projected scrims on either side, and then through a lighting and video magic, then it would be revealed that there was another half of the audience, so that we could charge them another ticket later to pay for all those projectors. And so, problem is, like, for just 20 minutes of the show to have, and those side stages were about 50 meters wide as well, so that's a lot of projectors to cover the back area. So we designed a rotating projector yoke, right, for double stacks of projectors that could hit the side stages. Then main stage had 2 levels of projection, and then when they faced each other, another layer. And so within the VYV, now we're manufacturing these yokes in China. We found some great vendors to do it with, but like, you know, everything's both on the bleeding edge, but also everybody has a budget to deal with. So what was amazing about the Photon setup is because it knew where the projector was in real time, when inevitably one of those yokes failed, the video outputs black, not the wrong thing in the wrong direction, because the projector knows if it's pointing in the correct direction. And when they told me that, it blew my mind. But so that was one means of efficiency there, and another one was we were working with a drone company, and you see all the OptiTrack cameras around us here. When you're trying, now these are for filling this space. So imagine the space I was just talking about with moving light tracking and projection tracking that needed to be pixel accurate everywhere. So VYV takes the OptiTrack data directly into the server rather than going through a motive server. And so the efficiency of the code base is part of what gives you the magic that they were talking about. But also, I was working with a drone company for a 15-minute gag to try and do something kind of like your Fireflies. And is one of the software developers in China for DJI drones. But they use the non-lensed version of these cameras, right? And the nice ones these guys have, right? The issue with that, though, is to cover that amount of space with drones flying everywhere. I came to realize, like, I'd been spoiled by VYV for so long because they used, the code base is efficient enough that they could lens down a cheaper camera and cover a huge amount of space because they done, and so that was one of those things that both of these things, the technical design within the software development allows me on the infrastructure side to be able to accomplish the goal, right? And so working with a company that has already found those efficiencies in order to create the magic is something that's relative to anybody's process, even if you don't have $7.5 million for a video.
You know, let me borrow that one because that's already dead. So speaking of that show, just there's so much that we aren't going to be able to cover with our time here, but like one of the biggest things that happen with doing these stage shows with projection is that you're always fighting with lighting. And we were already doing the automated lighting tracking, and because we did a 3D approach and we're controlling the moving lights and the projection, they're like, we got to figure out a way so that when somebody comes up to the wall of projection, that it's not, you know, washing it out. And the way that we approached that, because we're all in one ecosystem, was that we actually, when somebody is walking towards the wall and we know they're in the projection cone, we actually fade out the light and then virtually pick them up in the projection. So we desaturate, we approximate the size of the beam and convert that to the content to grayscale, and then that becomes a light. So you're fading out the actual lights and then picking it up in virtual light, which is the projection, so that you're not, you know, blasting out the projection. It's always arms race that way. I think we only have about 10 more minutes, right? 5. Oh, 5. So you kind of heard different things from us. Wanted to open up any questions. I know it's really short time, but yeah, Bob.
Played the arenas before, all of you, I think. My question is this, like, go, sorry. Oh, you're right. Going to the idea of like the freedom that comes with the integrating technology, for instance, the bubbles and the tracking, and the idea that every theatrical performance should be individual, which I adore as an artist. But for instance, on Blue Man Group, we spent 6 months workshopping completely interactive tracking phenomena with the Blue Men. The Blue Men as performers ended up being so consistent that that was worthless. when do you make the decision that there's a diminishing return for getting the technological advancement as opposed to relying on other human, less deterministic methods?
So that is a very good point, and I have a very good answer. When I don't have to do anything else but buy another little piece of hardware to make it happen. Because like in all, just to do the LiDAR for how VYV is doing the LiDAR, I just bought the LiDARs and it's in the ecosystem already. VYV has it as part of their ecosystem. I am not having to do anything more than buy the hardware. And the hardware cost versus what we could potentially gain was definitely worth the investment to us, because unlike the Blue Man Group, that show does 21 shows a day with 3 different casts. So we don't get consistency. But that's okay, because we have the technology there to help support it. So yeah.
How do you de-risk that, though? Because you've introduced control entropy, and you've introduced a layer technology.
Yep.
So, and I ask you this not because I'm not a fan of what you're
Yeah.
but because I get asked by some of your fine teammates, Bob, how do we de-risk that? Why do we,
I think that kind of comes with what I was talking about earlier. That and this is a personal opinion, not a Walt Disney Company opinion. I think we have become a little too risk averse. I think taking some risk on a potentially very beneficial technology that brings value to a show, and in turn brings value to our shareholders, because that show will last longer and be more influential to bringing people into the parks, is definitely worth it. And I think you have to look at the price of what it costs to do that and verse it against, hey, what do we have to gain from it? I'll be honest with you, what we paid to make that LiDAR system happen versus what we got out of it, not for just that show, but for the future of shows as we try and iterate on these technologies, is 100% worth the investment. And when I was sitting there at one point after the show opened with my senior vice president, him going, hey, what is all of this? Because he's an executive, he doesn't know what's going on, and being able to explain to him what's actually happening, he's like, oh, I want to talk to some people about this, because this is something we've been looking into for something else. Like, we now have a test bed for displaying all of these technologies as well. Like, there was something last week where someone else, I'm going to be very general here, was asking about something with tracking, and I was like, oh, I got a place where you can just go throw some trackers on something, we can take a look and see how it works. Because now we have that technology on campus, there ready to use and execute and benefit the company as a whole. So, yeah.
Did you want to?
Very quickly, on our side, it's very simple. It's a word, it's creation. When we were working with Dragon, rehearsal were not called rehearsal, but creation. Anything can happen, everything could happen, and everything should happen. Using technology like the tracking and all these things allow to give power back to the director, rather than having a locked up thing happening in video and having the performance being locked to that. Of course, dancers can be so precise, you don't need tracking. But what happened with a clone member when he needs to react to what's happening on the stage, to what's happening in the crowd, to the reaction of the audience? You need to be able to adapt every time. And well, that's what those technology allow us to. It's really giving the power back to the director and giving the power back to the show. The technology is not a break anymore. It's just part of the whole process.
Did you have
Great question, Bob. If I were to put my old Cirque corporate hat on, there are many times where we just had to deliver that bad news and say, you know what, you've got to spend the extra time with the dancers rehearsing for that consistency. So I did a lot of the Las Vegas redos of shows that have since died, unfortunately. But like, for instance, my first major project with Cirque Theater Projects was to add the projection mapping to the floor at Love. And I get chills thinking about it, and that show's closed, if any of you haven't heard about it, so find it on YouTube. But the choreographer spent a lot of time with what was choreographing video content with people. And the thing is you could always tell when it was later in the week and you saw a show, and there were moments that were just a little bit off, right? You can, if your job is to watch circ shows and make sure the technology is perfect with the people, right? I don't think the audience really would see that. The first project Box of Wishes did as a design company was to redo the video content for Zumanity. And we had zero budget. In fact, they hadn't even planned on redoing the video content, even though at the time, when the show was conceived, it was amazing erotic photography, but it was also like glorified PowerPoint. And so when we showed them what was possible, they said, well, we need a video content creating company, and they didn't want to pay anyone. And so I was working there, and I said, well, I'll do it, but you just still need to pay me a little bit, right? And so one of the acts that we did was, knowing that show and knowing how consistent the Beast was in his solo dance, we did a mirror effect that was pre-recorded with the right technology, with particle effects, to look like other circ shows that were live rendered. However, Guy hated it because he'd seen the real thing and noticed that difference. So we made 2 videos. Since he was doing his dance for Afrique character, we just did one video for Afrique, one for him, and so when they switched, it was like them watching. But even with that level of consistency, it really depends on who you're doing it for. A lot of circ shows, you're doing it for Guy before the audience anyway, and so he's like, no, it's got to be at this level. So I guess the long answer for that is like budget and how picky your producer is.
Other questions? Ben? Oh.
So discounting the industry that you're in and full appreciation for the technological advancements you've made in the shows you've worked on, if technology is off the table, where do you find your inspiration as artists?
Well, nothing I can say while being recorded. Just kidding. I'm extremely inspired by installation artists. So I think my background was in aesthetic philosophy, and I've spent my whole career trying to figure out what art and beauty is, and then try and help people define it through technical terms, things like that. And so to go back to the well, installation artists like Yoko Ono, like Tatsuo Miyajima, the James Turrell as well, like everybody loves ripping him off. I just took a pilgrimage to Naoshima and Teshima, and if you ever get a chance to go there, the art islands in Japan, do it. It's amazing.
Mine's going to be much more simple. As a new parent, it's now, I would say, my son. It's as both of those shows opened and being able to, I didn't care about anyone else seeing the shows. I cared about him being able to see the shows, and that joy that young children have when seeing something like that. That they're much more fun to watch than adults watching those shows, because it's just like the eye-opening moments and the smiles and the laughs and the scared moments too, of like seeing all that emotion. And like that's kind of where I've been drawing a lot of my inspiration from, is like anytime I'm doing anything now, it's like, what would he think about this? Even though he's a little 1.5-year-old, like what would he think about this? How would he see this? And it's helped me recenter myself a lot, because I was pretty tough on myself with those shows, because I was seeing every single little thing that was wrong with it. And then recentering myself through that lens of like, oh, he doesn't care about that. He just cares that Ariel's up there swimming around in bright colors.
I will have a quick answer. And for us, our inspiration comes from a simple question. How can we make this fun? And fun for us but fun for the audience. I mean, I kind of like a saying from P.T. Barnum that said that the noblest art is to make people happy. And we really love doing that. If you're having fun creating a show, most of the time the audience will have fun watching it.
I have a daughter, so Josh's answer is pretty much the same for me. Just because we have limited time, other questions? Anybody? Wherever the mic goes. Sorry.
Hello. I had a question about balancing when adding so much light and motion into a theater space. How you balance like augmenting a performance without overcrowding the performance, and if technology is a part of this spectacle, these larger transformations and a crescendo, how you draw it back into the nature of theater being about human connection in space?
So this is actually a great question and something I wanted to touch on. Let's take the villain show. LED walls. What do we know about LED walls? They emit light. They are terrible for theatrical performances because of that, because you have zero control of the light on your stage. You're just blasting light everywhere. So one of the steps we took with that show was being able to try and control the light out of the LED walls as much as we could, and that was through HDR. We actually adopted HDR for that show for that specific reason, because we wanted that luminance control of every single piece of content to be able to dial it in as dark as we possibly can get it without losing a ton of detail. Because we had another show, the Finding Nemo show over Animal Kingdom, phenomenal show, but it's 8-bit SDR, and that LED wall turns on, you might as well not have any theatrical lighting. Because it's crazy, because the villains panels are running at 1500 nits, the Nemo panels are running at 200 nits, but the villains panels look 20,000 times better, because we took the time to not just understand the technology and push technology, but using that for a theatrical purpose. And something real quick, I know we're running out of time. The last thing I wanted to say is your media server at some point starts becoming part of the performers. So like the Magic Mirror is the big performer in the villain show. And we called that, like the EDR, me and Sophia here, we're joking around that it was the Magic Mirror's dressing room. Because that's where he lived at during the show, because that's where the media servers were, and he's now a performer. It is part of the performance, but we have to do as much as we can to control the light we're outputting to be able to not take away from the other theatricalness of other people's disciplines.
So that is all the time we have. These panelists will be over, see them, talk to them about any of the other projects. You can talk to me. We want to thank you for your time, and have a great rest of the conference.